I know you gentlemen have been through a lot, but when you find the time, I'd rather not spend the rest of this winter tied to this fucking couch. Welcome to the Hey You Guys podcast. We're your hosts, Rob and Liam. How you doing, mate? You okay?
Yeah, all good. Well, even better after watching this film. This has been my favourite one. Honestly, of all the films we've gone back and watched as part of the Hey You Guys podcast kind of review of the films we grew up with, this is the one I've enjoyed the most because I had to, it's probably been the longest since I've seen this film. I grew up enjoying this film, but I haven't seen it for the best part of, I would say, nearly 20 years. And even when I was younger, I remember watching the thing, but I haven't seen it a ton of times, so I couldn't even remember. I remembered the main beats, but I couldn't remember the finer details. And I watched it yesterday for the first time in, like I said, nearly 2 decades. And what a movie! This is legitimately a masterpiece. I don't want to jump ahead to the ratings and stuff like that, but this film is unbelievable.
So the film, 1982, John Carpenter classic, The Thing, starring Kurt.
Sorry, did I almost review the film before we actually said what the film was? Well, I assume you know what it is. You've probably clicked on the link. You can see the picture. Okay, it didn't come as a surprise. Still unprofessional, but all the same.
I'm just helping the one random person who's gone, I wonder what this podcast is about.
Yeah. The one person who clicked random podcasts is what the fuck is this guy talking about? The Thing is what we're talking about. 1982, John Carpenter, The Thing.
There was 2 main stars to this, mind. There was Kurt Russell and Russell's hair and beard combo.
Oh, dude, I'm glad we're getting to that early doors because, Kurt Russell's hair and beard, I feel like, are becoming a more and more important part of my life. And I was wondering, how highly does this rate on the Kurt Russell hair and beard scale combo? Because you've got the big hitters of this, Snake, obviously from Escape from New York.
Yeah.
And, I actually think it maybe his later films, like Tombstone, I know was the 90s. And then his more recent stuff, like Santa, which is pretty epic, Bone Tomahawk, and what's the other one? Hateful Eight, where he's gone big on the mustache. This is a more traditional beard, but I feel like it's elevated by the incredibly feathered hair, which I think might elevate it to the top spot.
Does it just have to be the hair and beard combo? Because his hair in Big Trouble in Little China is magnificent as well. Just free flowing and.
If we're just judging the hair alone, then I think my favorite would probably be. And don't get me wrong, that's not to just count just how much I love his feathered barnet in this movie. But if we're just looking at the hair, then it's probably Big Trouble in Little China. But as a combo, I think this might be the one to beat. Although, like I said, saying that, his massive mustache in Tombstone, and even his Santa, where it's just fucking everywhere. I'm a big fan of that as well. The guy can just rock facial hair.
He put the work in for this film, though, didn't he? Because he grew it for a year before.
A year,
yeah.
The thing is, I like the idea of that because there's no way that beard took a year to grow. It was but he was cultivating it. He was adding the special herbs and berries to make sure it was as luxurious as it possible. He's like, this is going to be seen on the biggest screen. This isn't just going to be a beard. This is going to be the most luxurious beard and hair combo the world has ever seen. And I think he might have pulled it off. Although he does somewhat tarnish it. And let's be clear, the fact that he pulls this off speaks to the utter awesomeness of Kurt Russell, the fact that he can even do it. But what the fuck is up with that hat? What is up with that hat, dude?
I had that written down. He is so cool until he gets in the helicopter and puts on this weird cowboy sombrero thing.
I don't know what it is. It reminded me a little bit of remember the Mountie hat that Pharrell went through a phase of wearing? I think that's the closest thing to it. But even that doesn't do this fucking, like you said, it's a sombrero crossed with a cowboy hat.
I appreciate it. Probably the science behind it was to help him with the glare from the sun, maybe?
I don't think there's I refuse to believe there's science behind that hat. There's no science behind that hat. That hat is fucking insane. And it's only made even more insane. And again, the fact that he pulls it off is insane. It looks like he's wearing a blue towel around his head. I don't know what the score is there.
We're going here already. When they end up in a Norwegian camp and he takes his hat back down and he pulls that blue towel and releases the lion's mane of hair, that is amazing. Like a L'Oreal advert.
It is. It's weird because you've got one of the coolest looking cinematic characters. And, I'm comparing him with a lot of his own, Snake Plissken, stuff like that. like McGreedy just looks cool as shit. The hair, the beard, the scowl, the whole works. The jacket, he just looks fucking dope. And they're like, well, how can we make him look a little bit like a moron as well? Well, we'll give him a comedy hat, we'll wrap a fucking towel around his head. And even that can't make him look like an idiot. So, yeah, I mean, it's, like you said, it speaks to the utter cool of Kurt Russell and the character McGreedy, that he survives the hat. Because I tell you what, lesser actors, lesser characters, they wouldn't survive that hat. That would be the end of them for the film. You imagine you were watching, say, Commando, and you've got John Matrix carrying a fucking tree, and you're like, this guy is the coolest thing in the world.
Wearing a sombrero.
He puts on the fucking cowboy sombrero cap. You're like, well, I can't take him seriously for the rest of the film. He's as bad as the guy in the chainmail vest.
All he needed was the corks, like the Australian hat, just popping down.
The thing is, I can only assume that hat was custom made. It's the only one in existence because I'm not aware of any other hat that looks like it. I don't know culturally where it comes from, what they were trying to achieve. They just thought, let's create the craziest fucking hat we can and just plonk it on Kurt Russell's head and see if he still looks cool. The answer is, yes, he does, somehow.
Everything Kurt Russell did in this film, Mac, his character name in this film, leads you to that he's the hero. But he was my hero instantly when he jumps out of the way of a bullet, just witnesses an explosion, and doesn't put his bottle of J&B Scotch down.
It's fucking hero stuff, isn't it? Although, and obviously, you know, we're looking at the start of the film.
You're going to talk about the guy getting shot who doesn't even...
Well, a lot of things happen at the start of the film. They're scientists. They're at this research base in the middle of the Antarctic. And all of a sudden, you see this helicopter. It's shooting at a dog randomly. They're throwing grenades at it, which is a ballsy move, let's be clear. Yeah. To start a movie with somebody trying to kill a really cute dog. Like, that is like the complete opposite of what nearly every other film does. I mean, if you look at films like Independence Day in 2012, Roland Emmerich spends those movies destroying the earth, killing millions upon millions of people, but he offsets it by saving a dog. You think, the dog, people forget that tunnel scene in Independence Day. The flames are coming through the tunnel. All these thousands of humans are being burnt alive, but the dog survives. So you're like, oh, yes, the dog survived. What about the fucking humans?
My wife does it in any film. If the dog gets hurt, like, you better not kill the dog. Kill all the people in the world.
Exactly.
Don't touch the dog. Yeah, and she will not watch.
This film starts with a bunch of Norwegians like, all right, let's shoot at the dog. That's not working. Let's clumsily throw grenades at the dog.
Before we go into all of that, that's that opening shot, mind, where it's from the bottom. You've got a bit of shaky cam as it looks at the top of the cliffs, and you just see, and it's silent as well, seeing the helicopter just flying over. That is such a great shot. Pardon the pun. It is fantastic.
It is a great shot, but it's actually not the first shot, and it's a shot I totally forgot about. The opening is of the spaceship, and I was like,
I forgot, because I was going to ask you, was that thrown in?
I was watching. I was like, wait a minute, is this the start of Predator? It's almost exactly the same. Just a cold opening of a spaceship flying towards Earth. It's even got quite similar music, and I was like, what the? I can't remember this at all.
I don't remember it, but it turns out it was part of the film. Like all the time, because they didn't play the Universal world thing, because they already had the world with the alien ship crash landing. They didn't want two worlds, like having this and then confusing it with the Universal logo. Just type font of Universal.
I almost think it's a bit of a shame, and as much as I love Predator, and as we all know, I fucking love Predator, I would say both of these films, it's a superfluous start. I feel like it's a company, like, you know, a Warner Brothers, Universal, you literally just said. I can imagine it being like one of the kind of guys watching the film, watching the cuts, and being like, we need to explain at the start that this film's about an alien. And in both cases, these films are nearly perfect. Like, the Thing is so fucking good. But in Predator and The Thing, I would cut that opening scene. I just don't think it's needed, the alien scene at all. I think it ruins it. I prefer to go in blank, and, you know, it's like you're finding out with them, because it's so fast-paced. Like, you're knee-deep in fucking aliens and weird shit within, like, 15 minutes of this film.
But I'm wondering if that's why we forgot about it. Because to me, it always started with just the whiteness of Alaska.
And it's a gorgeous opening shot, like you said.
And like I said, and then that opening shot, and then it's silent as the helicopter's getting closer and closer. And then as it gets closer, then you see the dog just running through the snow. And this is, what, as you say, where all the shit kicks off. You've got Okay, I'm not a marksman, and I'm not a marksman from a helicopter, so please don't attack me for this. But that guy is a terrible shot.
That guy's never taken a shot at a dog from a helicopter. This podcast is fucking bullshit. I'm not having it.
Yeah, but he can't even hit him with the grenade. He can't. But he didn't even hit it when he got out of the helicopter. Like, come on.
Well, I appreciate that. I feel like they'd already established that they were quite clumsy. Like, he's shooting at the dog, he's missing by miles. He throws grenades at the dog, misses by miles. He gets out of the helicopter. The first thing he does is drop the grenade like a fucking clown.
He didn't drop it. He threw it behind him.
like a cartoon. Yeah. It was unreal.
And if you throw a grenade behind you, like you personally, if you ever throw a grenade behind you, what are you doing? Are you trying to run in the snow and grab it, or are you running as fast as you fucking can?
You're belting it. But obviously Norwegians don't get... I don't know, man. I don't know. And it's weird.
Let's not attack the Norwegians, okay?
I'm totally going to attack the Norwegians. All right. The weirdest thing about this is that all this is happening, and again, you're talking about 12, most of them are scientists. Obviously, we'll get to McGreedy's backstory in a bit, but the majority of them are just, scientists and stuff. And they're watching all this happen. The dude comes down, he starts shooting a dog. One of the guys gets shot in the leg. It's not Gary. I think he gets shot in the leg.
No, not Gary was the leader.
Oh, no, he was the one. Gary's the one who shot the dude. Yeah.
Covets that pistol a lot.
Yeah. And nobody seems to react. Everyone just seems to kind of watch. I'm like, dude, you should all be freaked the fuck out. This is weird as fuck. Everyone just kind of stands there and goes, this is kind of bizarre. Even when he gets shot in the leg, nobody really goes off the deep end.
Yeah, but it's quite bizarre. He didn't even react. He got shot in the leg and he went, I've been shot.
This is bizarre.
But I loved that quick little interaction between Mac and again, we're doing him a disservice by not saying his name. 2 secs. What was his name? It wasn't Bennings. So Bennings gets shot.
Okay, yeah. One of the more forgettable characters.
Yeah. Mac runs over to Bennings, just gives him the bottle of J&B. We're coming back to that bottle.
Total baller.
And then just runs up. And all he does, he drinks from it. Like, I've been shot in the leg. Oh, I'll just have a swig. Like, you've got to be a man's man to work out there.
Well, Antarctica obviously toughens you up. That's all I can think. But I
Antarctica or Alaska? Where were we? Because I think
it's Antarctica.
It is Antarctica, is it?
Yeah, because my wife and I were having this whole conversation about Antarctic versus Antarctica, the landmass versus the continent, the fact that there's the Arctic.
Well,
the Arctic
conversation.
The Arctic is north, but of course there's no landmass. Well, there's land masses north of the Arctic Circle, but they're all part of countries, like Svalbard's part of Norway, you get part of Greenland, part of Canada, but there's no, like the North Pole, there's no actual landmass there. There's ice, which floats past it, but there's no fixed land like there is with the Antarctica, which is a continent. So we were going through all this yesterday, and this went on for far too long.
Your dinner conversation sounds interesting.
Oh, yeah, it was an absolute battle. We learned a few things from watching this film. And one of the things I did appreciate, though, was finally, we finally got a bit of Nordic racism. It's like they always get away with it. It's like, when was it? Like, I'm going to go on the record here, and I'm going to say there's not enough Nordic racism on screen. It's just, you never hear it. It's like, I can't remember anyone ever going, Jesus Christ, give the fucking Norwegians a break, will you? Like, they're never on the receiving end of racism. And then I watch this film, I'm like, yeah, they are. McGreedy fucking hates the Norwegians. I found it refreshing.
My second favourite line, obviously I already did my first quote, which I really enjoyed, but then the second one, which was, hey, Sweden, they're not Swedish, Mac, they're they're not Swedish, Mac, they're Norwegian, whatever.
Whatever, he didn't give a fuck. It's like, they're blondes, they're from the Nordic states, Swedish, Norwegian, who gives a fuck? McGreedy didn't give a fuck. So it's just strange that you just get this random, like, Nordic racism at the start of the film. But as I said, I hadn't really seen it on the screen before, so, why not? I felt a little bit different, at least.
As we saw all the guys then gathered around, I've loved Keith David for years. He's such an underrated actor.
He's great in this.
He is great in this. But my God, I never knew he was 7 foot tall.
He's a big guy. The only
he
thing
should
is,
shave his head more. That's all I'm saying.
With Keith David, it's just when he's the one person who reacts naturally, because this obviously goes on for a bit. Weird shit keeps happening, and it's like finally it's Charles who breaks down. It's like, so how these motherfuckers wake up out of the ice after 1,000 years? And all I keep expecting to say is, how the hell did you get the Frank above the beans? It's like immediately go to...
something about Mary.
Something about Mary. But he does at least like the classic black guy thing. Like he's like, oh, you white motherfuckers. You know, you hear bump in the night, you're all going to it. As black motherfuckers, we bounce in it. I'm going to be honest, I'm with the black guys. You know, it's like, I'm getting the fuck out of it. But I don't know, man. Charles in this film, like, he absolutely kills it. Like you said, he's just not in enough movies.
No,
he's not. In, what's his name? Keith David.
Keith David. Oh, you say he's in everything, mind? Just usually in the background, or he's the rogues, like the random CIA chief. Or you look at his
no, he's got a
ridiculous, but he's not the lead of many films. Or
you just think like he should have been in more good films. Like he should have had bigger parts. Like you said, you watch him in this film, and you're like, why don't you have bigger parts in great movies? Because he's really good in this.
Him and Danny Trejo are probably in every film you've ever seen. Just in the background. Like,
I think he's better than Danny Trejo.
It's just ridiculous as well.
I think he's better than Danny Trejo, man. Like Danny Trejo's good, but like I've seen enough of Danny Trejo and his stick. I'm like, I would happily see Keith David in a lot more movies.
So as an actor, he has 333 credits.
Maybe I'm underselling him. Jesus fucking right. What are the films that come up if you put in Keith David into... I'm going to do it very quickly on my phone.
Well, the first one I'll tell you is They Live.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Oh, does he do the famous fight scene with Roddy Piper?
Yeah, that's him.
Oh, yeah, of course he's in that.
I haven't
seen that film for ages. That's another one we need to do.
We will definitely be doing that one.
Not heard of that. They Live. The Princess and the Frog. I love The Princess and the Frog. I didn't know he was doing one of the voices. The Thing. I didn't know he was a voice in Caroline. I love Caroline. He's in Platoon.
During the 90s and stuff. Like he's done a lot. He was Spawn's voice in any animated project of Spawn. He was Spawn.
Yeah, but again, like you said, like he's been in tons of things. He's had cool little parts, but he doesn't have a whole host of like, oh, remember when Keith David played so-and-so, you know? And it's like, that's what he's lacking.
Let's be clear. Like, if I tell you Keith David, or I tell somebody else, they're not going to have a clue what I was on about if I said Tom Cruise. But to me, I love Keith David. And like I said, he should shave his head more, because that guy looked like he just wanted to kill every fucker on the planet. He was mean looking.
He was mean looking, but that's one of the great things about this film. I mean, you could argue that 4 or 5 of the characters are maybe superfluous in that kind of horror movie kind of style way. They're just there to get killed. But there's like 6 or 7 really good characters in this film, of which he's one, and they never quite fall into cliche. You know, it's like they're all quite subtle. They don't go out of their way to kind of, oh, this is this guy. I mean, of course, he's tough and stuff like that. But there's enough subtlety to let you fill in the gaps, I think, with a lot of these characters. And that's one of the great things about this movie. Is like, once you get past, okay, like I said, 4 or 5, they get killed, you don't care. There is that kind of core 5 or 6, you know, like Childs, obviously McGreedy, Blair, etc., where you're like, oh, you know, I'm interested to see how this turns out. And there's just enough to them where you're like, and again, they want to keep you at arm's distance with this film. You know, obviously you can't do that with McCready because he really is the star of the film.
Yeah.
But with everyone else, you don't want to get to know them well enough, because you don't want to be, if they start acting weird, you want it to be enough of a question mark. And that's one of the things this film does amazingly well. I don't think any film has set up quite such an intense sense of paranoia as this film. Oh, it's like you are constantly watching, and there's all these like subtle nudges, subtle tweaks, you know, little tells where you're like, fuck, is he the thing? Is he the thing? And it's like, it's never clear. It's never clear.
The suspense, especially when they're testing everyone's blood and they're all tied to the chair and everything,
Mm-hmm.
the suspense in that, even Mac explaining why he, like, just seeing what happened in there, then every part of that thing, every cell wants to survive. That gave me an idea to tell. And then you have and it's even down to the sound where he puts the needle, the hot copper wire, into the blood and it sizzles, and then the scraping. And it's not once or twice. They do it for every one of them in there. They're testing it. And it builds suspense. It builds tension. Like, who's going to do it? And then when the blood explodes, oh my God, that was fantastic.
Well, that's the great thing about that. It's like, because obviously it kind of feels like, obviously it kind of keeps going after the famous test scene kind of thing, but it feels like it's all building up towards that, like constantly building a sense of paranoia, a sense of mistrust. And obviously building up this idea of well, you're told actually pretty early doors how this is an alien. And they seem to get on board. Like they find the alien ship really early doors. Obviously, they find
which looks fantastic, by the way.
Yeah, it was the only. Again, it's the power of matte paintings. If you do it the right way, they can still look great. Although I did have an issue with this film in general because I was like, it's not on Netflix or Amazon or anything like that. I was like, okay, I could pay to rent it, but I was like, I've got it on DVD. So I was like, I haven't watched it on DVD for that was the last time I watched it. So
the old grainy.
Oh, dude, it's rough because it's the widescreen version. Yeah. So you've got the bars at the top and the bottom, but then also because it can't deal with the aspect ratio and the size of my modern TV, it has big, huge black banners on the sides as well. So essentially it turned my 55-inch TV into a 27-inch TV. And the fact that even though it's a DVD, it does look... we're used to high def now. It looked pretty fucking grainy. Yeah. So I got used to it pretty quick, but there was a spell at the start of the film where I was like, man, this is not the perfect way to watch this film at all.
I had it the other way round, see, because I never watched this in the cinema, but as you know, a lot of cinemas used to play old films, like they'd have a old school Tuesday or something. Do you know what I mean? So you could watch them as they were. So when I first saw this, I actually saw it in the cinema.
Yeah, awesome.
Random, yeah. And I saw the proper cut of it. So you had the grain running, like the proper film reel.
Like if you were watching like the old 17mm cut, like the original kind of footage. Yeah, I did the same with Alien and Aliens.
So when I watched that was great. And when I put it on Friday when I watched this, I had the 4K upgraded
the full restoration. Did it look good?
It was fantastic. It looked great. Awesome. But I was questioning going, I don't know if I want the old feeling version that I had when I watched it, because
it's nice to have both.
I've not been able to say, especially with films that we watch now that are the 18s and 15s, we didn't watch them in cinemas as kids, obviously.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that I can't turn around and say I watched this in the cinema first time. The first time I saw this film, I watched it in cinema. Because as we're growing up, the first time we see these films are usually on BBC One, BBC Two at 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I first saw this in the cinema, which was the best viewing ever. So I'm wondering if I want, but again, I forgot about that really quickly because the 4K restoration version is fantastic.
Well, that's the thing. As I said, beyond the fact that this was my favorite viewing of, I think this is our 12th episode.
Yeah,
this is the first one where it's like I immediately wanted to watch it again, and I've literally just gone out and bought it on Blu-ray because I was if I'm going to watch this again, I can't watch that busted ass DVD. Like, there's something charming. If I was watching it on an old CRT monitor and it was a fucking VHS and it's all crappy, I could get on board with that.
Yeah.
But watching the widescreen DVD on a modern TV, it was this weird halfway house. It didn't look quite old enough to be charming, but then it didn't look new enough to be shiny. So it just looked a bit shit. So I admit that I watched this not under the perfect conditions, but that didn't deter from the fact that this is still an amazing film. And as I said, it's the speed of it which gets you into it. It's like straight away, you've got that scene with the dog and everything like that. And they're like, well, we got to find out what happens. They get in the helicopter and it's straight off. They go to the Norwegian camp. They find that fucked up body, which gives you an immediate idea of the effects you're dealing with, which, oh God, what's his name? The guy who does the effects, Rob something.
Yeah, he did. Stan Winston took over for a couple of them, but
Rob Bottin was the special effects guy.
He was young, wasn't he? 19, 20, something like that?
Which is insane because this one's from 1982 and I would say, other than, you can tell the matte painting's a matte painting. There's one scene at the end with a tentacle, which looks a little bit Ray Harryhausen stop motion animation. But other than that, the effects are outstanding. Like, unbelievable.
What did you say? I got his name as Roy Arbogast.
Oh, shit. Why have I got Roy Bottin? Have I made that up? Jesus Christ. I don't want to get that wrong.
Roy Arbogast was the special effects guy for this film.
Who the fuck's Roy Bottin then?
I don't know.
Wait. Have I just made him up? Is a similar name? I've just totally made this dude up.
Did you type it down in your phone and it auto-corrected some Bottin?
Maybe I've done that. Oh my God. I just looked at it, I was like, Roy Bottin, and I was like, who the fuck's Roy Bottin? So, okay, not Roy Bottin.
I said, yeah, that's him. And then I went,
that's him. Roy Bottin. It's like, wait a minute.
Let me check. That was Roy Arbogast.
Roy Arbogast. But yeah, to get back to the point, Jesus Christ. The effects are outstanding, and like straight away, you see the model, and the model's pretty cool. And immediate. Again, I would argue the fact that none of the scientists at this mysterious research facility. Well, by the way, I have no idea what the fuck they're researching.
I don't think they.
Nobody reacts with as much shock as they should. Like this weird alien life form. They find aliens. She's like, oh, that's pretty weird. You find this weird alien body. They start cutting things out of it. My wife, as a scientist, she immediately was upset with what did she refer to as the PPE, the personal protective equipment. She's just like, it's not up to scratch. They're doing, again, I'm not quite sure why they've got autopsy equipment at this research facility in the Antarctic, but I mean, those flimsy little gloves, they've got no masks on. They're dealing with an alien entity here as far as they're concerned. They're just like, oh, don't worry about masks. It's like, I think it's Windows. He pokes it with a pen and then puts the pen in his mouth. Yeah. Like, dude, what the fuck are you doing?
If you're saying that, then it's the testing scene as well. I had that written down. When they did the testing scene, they're all using the same scalpel to cut.
All he does is Windows.
Yeah,
and just rubs it on his jeans like, oh yeah, that's enough. It's like, Jesus Christ, man. They've literally, Blair goes out of his way. Okay, he does it like a fucking lunatic, but to explain that this is really contagious, super dangerous, and everyone's mad blasé about it. Yeah. Although I love the way that Blair finds out, like he does his computer science to figure out how dangerous this is. As far as I can tell, it looks like he's playing asteroids, which is really strange because in the cafeteria, there is an asteroids arcade machine. And I'm not sure if that's a nod to the arcade machine, because when you see the foreign body special effects attacking the human cells, I'm like, dude, it looks like you're playing asteroids. It's so fucking budget.
But I love, after that, and I'm sorry, we interrupted the fact you were talking about the PPE, but
that's okay.
I love, after that, he's on his computer, and he's just so clever, like, oh, it's going to happen, this is what's going to happen, blah, 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 we can't let it get off. And then he went from that to, let's just destroy everything. Not even explain to everybody what's going on. He just went straight into Windows radio room and just went fucking insane.
Well, I thought that was because I thought the exact same thing. I was like, man, for somebody who's, a scientist, seems pretty level-headed, he goes off the deep end really quick. And you do get that a few times in this film. Everyone's level-headed until they're not. And when they're not, they're fucking lunatics. But it's great because you watch that scene and it totally tricks you into thinking, well, it can't be him because he's freaking out about it. He's the one who's like, I'm so scared of it. I'm so freaked out about it that it's like, well, it can't be Blair. It just can't be. But then you find out it fucking is. It's like, and again, they just keep, when they push you towards a character like Knowles, who's like, again, it's that weird thing with this film. It's from 1982, but a lot of films from the early 80s, they still feel like 70s films. Yeah. The same with, if you go back and watch First Blood, you think of Rambo as being the quintessential 80s movie. First Blood looks and feels like a 70s film, and so does this. And it's only, my point being that Rambo only starts to feel like an 80s film once you get to First Blood Part 2 in the mid-80s. It's basically, the 80s as we know it, certainly from a movie's perspective, really started at around 1984, when you started getting the bombast and the absurdity.
But that was my argument with Groundhog Day as well, because Groundhog Day felt 80s to me.
Yeah.
Because it was the early part of the decade does follow on from the previous decade.
Yeah.
And you feel it a lot in this film. Like you said, First Blood, but you feel it a lot in this film as well. It just all of it feels 70s.
It's even the way it's shot, the way it's acted. You get the fade outs; they feel very 70s to me. The fact that it's dark green. The thing is, this film was actually written and like production started on it in the mid 70s. Yeah. So, and I feel like you can feel it, and obviously, there's the thematic sense of not trusting others and stuff like that. But this is you could clearly take this as an analogy for the Cold War. The outsider, all that jazz. And again, this was I think part of it was because this was being produced and production, as I said, started in the mid 70s when it was at the very height of the Cold War.
And
it definitely has that feel.
The other analogy was the AIDS crisis.
Yeah. Which goes into that's more the 80s, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. But it was this filmed in the 80s during the height of, again, the AIDS crisis. So
yeah.
I mean, you had the who's infected, nobody knows. The only way to tell is by a blood test.
Totally.
That analogy and that and everyone, again, nobody wanted to talk to him. Nobody could trust anyone kind of thing with that. So it's...
We've talked about this before, where you can read it a lot of different ways. And again, it's testament to just how good the film is. Because I think we mentioned this about like The Shining and other films of itself, where you get all these readings, and Groundhog Day, that was the other one we talked about it. The reason you get all these readings is because people love the movie so much, and it's been watched so many times over so many years that people invariably get more and more theories.
Yeah.
And it comes back to, even though these theories are very interesting, these different readings, you're only getting them because the film's fantastic, which is amazing, because this is another one, and again, along the lines of Predator and Blade Runner, which I think was unbelievably released the exact same day, was that these films were completely bombed. The thing bombed, and not only that, it got critically mauled. And I'm at the point now where I'm like, did any of John Carpenter's films ever do well in the cinema? Because it feels like everyone we talk about, it's like, it was found afterwards on VHS and it grew this cult following. But this film has been like, to more than, as much as I love Predator, and they got that wrong, of course, but this is up there with like Blade Runner in terms of complete critical misfires, where the critics have got it so utterly wrong. Like, there was something in the water. They've all decided that we don't like this film, and it's been completely and utterly reappraised, because even though it's a different genre, this is like obviously a suspense thriller, sci-fi horror, whatever you want to call it. This is up there with Blade Runner as a legitimate masterpiece. Like, this film is so good.
This was released the same year as E.T.
Yeah. Well, that's what they blamed it on, wasn't it?
Yeah,
to an extent.
The whole alien thing. And I'm going to go on record now and say I hate E.T.
I fucking hate E.T.
Oh my God.
Dude, I didn't know that. I'm with you. I can't stand it. It's magical, terrible. But I just don't like E.T. He's a creepy little bastard. He is a creepy little bastard.
Don't expect E.T. covered on this podcast, then, apparently.
No fucking way we're doing E.T.
Oh, my God.
But that is the thing, that like E.T. was released around the same time, and obviously that was whatever we might think of it, was an absolute, it was one of the biggest hits of all time. But it was also during a recession, and it was like people were flooding to see the feel-good E.T., and then suddenly you've got this like nihilistic, really dark, quite mean-spirited movie, The Thing.
It didn't make much of a box office, did it, if I remember
right? No,
it
bombed. It bombed. It totally bombed, and it was critically slammed. And again, it's another one of these John Carpenter films where you can see why he walked away from the industry. It's like, why aren't people giving him the fucking, like, they're not giving him his dues. And it's almost like the critics are being forced to reassess it, because people end up, more and more people find these movies. People don't just like them, but they adore them. Yeah. And eventually it's like these critics, it's like they almost need to walk it back and go, wait a minute, how the hell did we watch The Thing and say this is not just a so-so, an average film? They're saying this was a terrible movie. And it's like, how could anybody watch this movie and say it's terrible? It's, oh God, it boggles the mind. But it happens sometimes.
We should say this is John Carpenter's first of his Apocalypse trilogy, I think he called it, with Prince of Darkness and then Into the Mouth of Madness.
Do you know, I've not seen either of those films, unbelievably.
Prince of Darkness I've seen once, and I think Mr. Miyagi's in that. Mr. Miyagi.
Mr. Miyagi.
Pat Morita. And I have seen Into the Mouth of Madness, and both very odd films. But
yeah, I need to watch them, and it is kind of on my list because, as I said, I only recently fully watched Escape from New York, which seems like an absolute crime. So my big thing at the moment is making sure I kind of fill out the John Carpenter movie collection, because there's quite a few that I haven't seen. Who's done a little bit hit and miss.
Than you would picture with John Carpenter. He's done a lot of films.
Yeah, he's done quite a few. Yeah. He did Carrie as well. Was it not Carrie? Did he do Carrie? Which one did he do? He did the one with the car. I think he did. Christine. Yeah. So he's done plenty. I don't know. I picked that one out at random. I mean, don't get me wrong. He went off the deep end a little bit. Like some of his later films, his like 90s, 2000s output is pretty ropey.
Well, you mean you didn't like John Carpenter's Escape from Mars? No, it wasn't Escape from Mars.
No. It was not Vampires on Mars. The one with Ice Cube.
Ice Cube, yeah.
What the fuck was it called? Mars.
Ghosts of Mars.
Ghosts of Mars. Yeah, that film's terrible. That film is rough.
Jason Statham.
I know.
Appears in that film randomly.
But it's not. It's got a weird cast, but it's just a bad film. It's a bad film. So yeah. Let's stick with the good stuff. It's 80s output, and the thing, I would say some people argue that it's his greatest film, and I think it's a completely legitimate argument. I mean, obviously, Halloween is going to be up there. Escape from New York, Big Trouble in Little China. They're kind of the big hitters that come to mind. But I think it's a completely legitimate argument.
This film is done so well. Like we said, the tension, the music, and we'll get to music later. Mm-hmm. The music, the writing, everything. The only misfire that it seems to be for this film, and it's probably more not a misfire of the 80s, but more a misfire of now, is the fact that it's all male. I'm
not sure if I mind that.
I know what I mean is there is no. Well, there's no unless you count the voice of the computer that was doing the chess.
Which we're not going to count. I mean, let's be honest. If that's the only female character, he kills that character with whiskey about 15 seconds after it's been
and calls her a cheating bitch.
So
although you could count Gary's gun as a female character because he covets the fuck out of that thing.
He does cover the fuck out of that thing. It's a little bit weird, but yeah, I got to be honest, and maybe I'm looking at my male eyes, and I didn't even think about the fact that they weren't women. It's just like. Yeah, you can make an argument for it, but this is like the 80s. It's a military base. Let's not forget that kind of thing. And
it's not a military base, was it? It's a research.
I thought it was a military research base.
I don't think so because there's no soldiers there. No soldiers.
I thought it was military related though. I don't think so.
I literally just think it's
not very well explained. I don't know really what the fuck they're doing.
That's the thing. But a good thing. I'm sorry, we're skipping off what we said. But you said about it not being explained. Again, what I wrote down that everybody just turns to Mac. As soon as this happens, everyone's asking Mac questions. Mac, what should we do? Mac, what should we do? Mm-hmm. And he's just the helicopter pilot. But I wonder if it's to do with an unwritten backstory. Well, it's got to be to do with an unwritten backstory.
There is a backstory to him. Supposedly he was
it was Vietnam. I got that.
Vietnam vet, and he had PTSD. So that's why he was up in the in the Antarctic, just kind of like, dealing with it in his own. And that's why supposedly he's always drinking. Because he's dealing with PTSD. But yeah, like you said, I assume they all know this. But again, I quite like the fact that so little's explained. It just throws you in. What are they researching? Who gives a fuck? It doesn't matter. The important thing, it's basically all about setting. It's just a reason to get 12 dudes in the Antarctic. And it's one of the things this film does so well is establish the sense of scale, the sense of isolation. And yeah, sure, what are most of them doing? I have no idea. One of them's literally called Doc because he's a doctor. There's Windows, who I assume is just there to look like a DJ. Like, I do they actually...
See, how did they get a young Rory McGrath to be Windows?
He does look like Rory McGrath, doesn't he? He's a very strange character, and I don't know what he's there. Like, it feels like everyone's just got one job, and that's it.
Can we go to the weird foreshadowing or foretelling of Mac and Windows in the same film before Mac and Windows ever became a thing?
Go for it.
Well, that's it. That's it.
Oh, sorry. I did apologize.
You've got a character named Mac and Windows, and they mess around with old school computers and stuff. But there was no Mac and Windows.
Oh, of course, yeah. Jesus Christ. Sorry, I was like, wait, are they in another film together or something?
Do I need to draw a picture for you?
You might need to draw a picture. Fucking hell, I am so computer illiterate. It's unbelievable. But yeah, it is bizarre, like you say, Mac and Windows, but they didn't exist. Supposedly he's called Windows because he keeps wearing glasses. That's it. He's always like, why is this dude wearing sunglasses indoor like a fucking Italian? It just makes no sense. But I tell you who steals this film though. Like, again, we love Charles, McGreedy, they're all great. It's Jed the fucking dog. That dog is... They should give an Oscar to that fucking dog. I've never seen a dog so convincingly portray evil and wrongdoings as that dog does. When it shows up and the way it just walks around and just fucking stares, that is a creepy ass dog, man. It's so good.
When it was in the rec room and it's just staring at people. And then,
dude, it's so creepy.
What was his name, the dog handler?
What's his name? Clark, yeah, which is another good one because I was convinced watching it the first time. I was like, man, it's Clark. Clark is definitely the thing. And it's not, you know, and I was like, oh, if it's not Clark, it's Knowles. Knowles, the super 70s black guy. The guy who going around on fucking rollerblades, wearing a headband, listening to Stevie Wonder. It's like, it almost feels a little bit, he's even got that kind of slightly racist, hey man, how's it going? Why don't you just chill? And you just think, wait, are they being slightly racist? And then Charles just comes in and fucking is just totally keeping it real. It's like, well, if they are, they're doing it by accident because they've got the coolest fucking black guy ever in this film.
Childs and, it wasn't Palmer, was it? What was his name? Was it Fuchs? Fuchs.
Fuchs, yeah, Fuchs.
The joint that they shared between them whilst watching The Price is Right. That thing was fucking massive. Yeah,
that was some serious smoking. Again, quite a 70s kind of vibe to that, I suppose. But yeah, it kind of leads into the fact that it still feels like a 70s film. But yeah, that dog's amazing. And, you know, it's that dog which really established, obviously, you know, you've had the matte painting and we've had the weird body with the two faces and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's the dog scene in the kennel where you really, like, I can't believe that this is being done in 1982 because the effects, fantastic. The physical effects held up. So I was like, I knew they were special effects. I knew that you know, they were held in high regard, but I was like, again, I've not seen this film for 20 years. Are they going to be a bit rough? And I was watching, I was like, these look fantastic by today's standards.
When his entire skull opens up, it's amazing. It's done so well, and it's so realistic.
I for one, Rob Bottin, God, what a guy, right? It's just so good. But no, to get to your point, like, there's that scene, like you say, where the head splits apart and there's the tentacles, and it's super great. Again, killing dogs. You don't see that very, and they don't die well. They don't die well. It's gross.
Oh my God.
But I would say later, the transformation scene where his head is stretching back, you know, the one where literally his head comes off.
And it becomes Spiderhead.
Spiderhead, yeah. That whole scene in particular, I remember, like, I was watching it, and I was like, I don't know how they're doing this. But one of the great thing in the build-up to these scenes, like, because obviously that starts with Doc getting his... Is that the scene where Doc gets his hands cut off, but bitten off?
He does the defibrillator, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And that is the one that got me when I was younger, watching this film for the first time.
Well, I think the reason why, and I don't want to tell you how to feel, of course, but it was like, obviously, you get the aliens and stuff, and it's all pretty fucking weird, but then there's like a 20, 30-minute period of this film where you almost forget that there's aliens and weird shit going on, because it's so heavy on like the human sense of paranoia and fear that if for 20, 30 minutes, it becomes exclusively a thriller and such. I was supposed to be taking notes. I didn't. There was a 30-minute period in this film, and I think it's this period leading up to the autopsy scene where you've got to take some fucking notes there. But I didn't write down anything because I was so into the narrative and the who did it. And I knew who the thing was. You know, I do remember the main points of the film. But that period is so good at establishing the movie as a thriller that you forget that it's a sci-fi horror. And then all of a sudden, like you said, when Doc does the defibrillator thing, and it's such a shocking moment where the body literally eats his hands, and the audacity, because on paper, you hear, you know, you imagine going through the script and you're like, you know, you've had 20, 30 minutes, there's nothing but solid gold, super tense. And then the body eats the Doc's hands.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck? And it shouldn't work, but it comes so out of the blue.
The stomach becomes a mouth, because as it opens, it's just teeth and everything.
And I don't think any film has gone off the deep end with effects in the same way that this film does. Like, they just like, let's make this as weird and fucking freaky as we possibly can. They just like, it's like a nightmare, I don't know, oil painting. It's just beyond. It's nightmare upon nightmare upon nightmare. Just as you think it can't get any more gross, but a head comes out of the body with another head, and then we'll throw tentacles out. It's just like, what the fuck?
And then when it becomes, again, Spiderhead and it's going away.
Spiderhead.
That's all I can think of.
Exactly what it is.
Spiderhead. That's literally what it is.
Yeah.
Fuchs has, again, one of the best lines. Was it Fuchs? No, Palmer, sorry. Where he just turns around, he looks at that spider, and he says what everybody is thinking of that, but it's just, you've got to be fucking kidding.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I was like, it goes so far off, and he's just like, what the... It's just like, yeah, you're totally speaking for the audience. But I actually think that's the most impressive special effect in the whole film, was when the head lands on the floor and the legs come out, and it literally turns into a spider. I was watching it, I was like, okay, I have no idea. Like there's no obviously computer effects, so all I can assume is magic. I have no idea. It's insane.
It doesn't really explain this film either, how the thing copies a person. Like, does it assimilate them? Does it kill them to get their cells and copy them? Or is it literally just that the thing is like moldable?
No,
I know it eats people, and I know it kills people just to get rid of them. Mm-hmm. But does it have to eat somebody to become that person?
That was my reading of it, because it had it with the dog as well. It's like it's trying to ingest the dog, and that's why it ends up like almost like a half monster, half dog thing, because it hasn't finished ingesting. And the same thing when it's trying to eat not Clark. One of them, like it grabs him when they're being totally blasé with the body. It's like they've got this big alien body. They don't put it on ice. They just put it in a storeroom under a blanket, and the guy's just got his back turned, and then it ends up like essentially eating him and turning him into the thing. Very fucking casual. But yeah, my impression was it needs to ingest it, and then it can, based on the cells, I suppose, or whatever science, it can replicate it then. And that's why you have that weird moment when he's not quite finished and he's got the weird hands when he runs out in the snow and just does that horrible scream thing. It's fucking gross, dude.
Dude, I've literally just had a eureka moment. Fucking hell. Blair, Dr. Blair. Wilfred Brimley. Fucking Cocoon. The weird uncle from Hard Target.
Yeah. He's usually the lovely character. I just totally associate him with Cocoon. 100% with
because in this film he hasn't got that mustache.
Yeah.
I literally did such shit together.
And again, I kind of associate him with being this nice old man with the mustache and stuff like that. And of course, in this, he goes insane really fucking early. He gets locked in the cabin out on his own. And, he has that moment when he's trying to convince everyone he's okay. And he's literally sitting there next to a noose.
I wanted to say that. How harrowing is that? You open the door to say, have you seen so-and-so? And he's like, I want to come in. I'm fine. Whilst he's looking through the noose. He's looking at Mac, and he's looking through the noose like that's some sort of picture frame. And he's like, I'm fine. I want to come in. I want to be with everybody. And you're thinking, wow.
Yeah, McCready's kind of looking at him and just going, dude, is that a noose? I mean, you're clearly not coming out. But again, it punts you immediately. It kind of steers you away from Blair. Yeah. And again, I was wondering with Blair, though, because I'm saying this, it steers you away from it. At what point did he become the thing? Was he already the thing? Or
no, I think he was in the shack. Because if he was the thing already, he wouldn't have destroyed the helicopter.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Like he destroys the helicopter, he kicks off.
I think the thing probably came up through the floorboards, and that's how he got out, and that's how they found it.
So are we of the opinion that even then, when Blair he's got the noose and all that jazz, he is human then, isn't he?
I think at that point he is human.
Yeah. You can maybe make an argument at that point that maybe he's made the noose, he's going to kill himself, but then the thing gets in, turns him. So when he's out saying, oh, I'm fine, I want to come out, he might already be the thing at that point. Hence why he's not reacting to the noose. Yeah. So I was like, oh, maybe Blair was going to kill himself, but then he becomes the thing, and the thing's acting very Blair is acting very blasé about the fact that there's a fucking noose next to him.
He probably doesn't know the fact that it's just if he's become the thing at that point, he doesn't know where a noose is, I would assume.
Well, even if he has, he's not acting quite right kind of thing. But again, it's all these like cool little nudges towards like, who the fuck is it?
We're going about the tension a lot as well. The other thing that adds to the tension is you really don't know how long everyone has been dealing with this.
Yeah.
Because how long was Blair in that shack? Because when they go back to find him and they go under the floorboards into his weird little cave.
That's weird.
He is building a ship. And it had to have taken some time because he'd have to have gone out, got parts from the helicopter, the snowcat, and gone back. So that's not like an hour's work.
No, that threw me. It was a little bit like Blair's version of the Shawshank Redemption, where he's like cut a hole in the floor and he keeps putting the boards back quite tightly. But he somehow built a spaceship. Yeah. I actually found that scene a little bit, I was like, I don't know about that. A little bit too what the fuck. Because I don't know, like you say, the sense of time in this film. But I got the impression that it was all relatively short-lived. This was happening at a relatively fast pace. But then that spaceship suggests not.
But again, and also when they said about leaving Mac outside, I thought Mac was just out there for an hour or two.
Yeah.
But it feels like when he's back in and just through conversation, he was actually out there probably all night.
Well, he must have been out there for, like, how quick is he building a spell? I know he's an alien at that point. Or maybe it was, I don't know. No, again, maybe I need to watch it a few more times. And like you said, I'll have that eureka moment when I'm like, oh yeah, that suddenly makes sense. But the fact that there was a half-built spaceship, like the timeline to me was a little bit thrown now. I was like, okay, I just don't get that sort.
Yeah, and but when Knowles, ditched Mac outside, and he said, oh, I found the McCready Long Johns or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then he's trying to get in. To me, all that felt like an hour or two.
Yeah, well, it seemed super quick.
Well, through conversation, they were talking about you leaving him out there. It was like they had a night where he was outside and they were inside.
Yeah, I found that, again, that was where like the timeline of the film felt a little bit shaky, because I was like, it feels like they've only been out for like a little bit, but then you see McCready when he shows up at the door and he's got like the dynamite and stuff. He looks absolutely like he looks like he's on death's doorstep. And
they said, like, how did you survive out there?
Yeah. That whole section, that was one of my few criticisms of the film, is that there are at times when I'm like, I'm not clear on the timeline.
I think it added to the tension of you don't know how long they've been going through it all. So you don't know how long they've been looking at somebody else and going, you real?
Yeah, no, I know, but like when I see somebody, it comes as a shock when he suddenly shows up at the door. And when I say a shock, I mean more in terms of I was just confused.
Yeah,
I was like, wait a minute, how fucking long have you been out there? I'm like, I'm not sure if that's great storytelling necessarily. I feel like, excuse me, maybe a scene or two could have been added, which kind of establishes the length of time that they've been out there. Because I'm going to be honest, I just thought Knowles, I mean, again, the great thing about that scene, and maybe this is what it's all really feeding into, is the fact that you just immediately think, you're like, I reckon Knowles is trying to set him up. Because at that point, I was like, oh, okay, well, if it's not Blair, then it's got to be Knowles. It's another one where it's like, that feels just enough to make me think, all right, that guy's the fucking thing. He's been infected. Because you're always on McGreedy's side. You're always like, well, it's not going to be McGreedy. So it looks like he's trying to, like, he's lost him out in the snow. How fucking convenient. He's the one who comes back with the Long Johns. And he's like, oh, dude, it's definitely him. It feels like a kind of switcheroo kind of thing. Yeah. But, of course, it all leads to one of the great scenes in horror cinema history, which you've already obviously mentioned to a certain extent, the test scene, which is absolutely amazing. It's so tense. And all the way through, obviously, beyond the health and safety issues, you just get this great, it's like this slow build. It's slow, it's quiet, it's super tense. Like you say, the moments when he puts the metal into the blood platelets and it's like the sound, and then the moment it goes off. The sense of panic is unbelievable. Like the chair, they're all tied to it, everyone's screaming, the chair's going up in the air. He eats fucking windows head first. He goes up in the air. Like, I was like, Jesus Christ, this is absolutely mad.
But again, you deal with that, and then you go back and test the blood. It's not like you've dealt with that. Okay, that was a thing. Let's untie you all. No, we're going to go back and we're going to do it again. We're going to sit.
You've got to finish the job.
We're going to move it. It's so.
It's weird. It's another one of those things with this film where it just seems to be tonally everyone's like really chill, or everyone's insane. Yeah. It's like it's at the end when they suddenly decide it's like we're not going to get away. It's going to be that we've got to kill the alien. And it's like, there's no build-up to it. It's like, well, things have gone off the deep end. Let's blow everything up with dynamite. It's like, they go straight to dynamite. It's like, I've had enough of this. Let's just blow the whole motherfucker up. Like, there's no big talk about, all right, we're not going to survive. I think somebody mentions it. It's like, well, we're not getting out of this, so we're going to have to make sure the alien doesn't. Yeah. You think that somebody might say, listen, I want to live, I want to survive. No. Dynamite everywhere, blow up the whole fucking base. It's all going under. That's it.
You get one of the best standoffs ever. Just Kurt Russell or Mac just staring at the Blair thing at this point. Massive. Yeah. Just stares at him and just, well, fuck you too.
Well, fuck you too, yeah. That probably is the most 80s thing in the entire film. But yeah, that it's when it escalates towards the end, it's probably not my favorite part of the film. But, because it's the one part where it feels like it inches towards horror movie cliche at times. It's like they're all together. They've all got this plan to blow the place up. Yeah. And it's like Knowles sees the body, which obviously Blair's dragged across the floor, and he doesn't shout to anyone else. He just he does the white guy thing.
Yeah.
He just walks after it. Like, I wonder what that is. I'll just go quietly investigate. It's like, dude, you've been at this place for the past couple of days. You know what the fuck's happening, right? And it's like, it's just there to kind of move the plot along, which felt like a bit of a shame at that point when they're just like, oh, we just want to wrap this shit up. But that did have one of the grossest scenes in the film, for all like the big special effects and the monsters and fucking heads coming out of asses and whatever else goes on. The bit where Blair sticks his hands into, is it Gary's face?
Yeah, and his fingers going through his...
Oh, it's so gross.
It's amazing. It looks so good.
And the only thing, it actually reminded me of, you remember The Faculty?
Yeah.
There's the bit at the end when the alien gets squished behind the kind of the bleachers or whatever you want to call them in the school.
And all the things come out of Elijah Wood's face.
Yeah, they all go into Elijah Wood's face, and I always remember thinking that looks so gross. And there's something about the way he just sticks his hands into his skin. I was just like, oh man, that is unpleasant, dude.
So we've been going on for about an hour now before we move on to the next sections, because this film is fantastic anyway. But
totally.
I think it ends in one of the best ways ever.
I love it. I love
that ending is the best ending, because it's two men who cannot now determine that they're real. One of them, both of them, might be human, might not be human. So they've given up. They're like, all right, well, we're both going to die. We might as well
they just essentially drink to death.
Yeah, and that is such an ambiguous ending as well. It's because you don't know, are they going to get rescued? Is there going to be, because they were saying nobody's coming for, like, what was it? 13 till spring or something, wasn't it? So it's weird because it's slightly open-ended, but it's relentlessly bleak as well. Because sure, you could have like, are one of them an alien, either of them aliens? It's like, but then equally, like, could either even survive? It's just super dark, and I'm not sure if it's a good or a bad thing, but it's the questions at the end of the film are actually answered in the 2002 video game, which was actually endorsed by John Carpenter. And John Carpenter actually voices one of the characters. He has an uncredited role in the video game. Are we moving on to video game section?
Oh, yeah, well, we'll do it now then. Fair enough. So, the video game was 2002. It was actually a relatively, not a massive hit, but it was a decent hit. I remember it coming out.
Very good game as well, if I'm honest. I enjoyed
it. Yeah, pretty decent. It was out on the original, the OG Xbox, PS2, and GameCube. It's by a company who have now gone into receivership, whatever. They no longer exist, Computer Artworks. But the film starts with the Special Forces team going to the base. So it's a direct sequel, and again, endorsed by Carpenter. They find Child's body there. So Child's died, and Mac isn't there. But at the end of the fucking game, Mac shows up magically in a helicopter video game style, to save you at the end of the film, the character you play, the Special Forces guy. So, neither of them were the Thing. So, and Charles just dies, and we don't know how Mac survives, but Mac both survives and ends up in a helicopter, maybe just because he's Kurt Russell. But that is, there was an official answer to this, because, sure, it's a video game, but it was fully endorsed by Carpenter.
What I liked about that video game was that brought in the tension thing. Like, it was
a tension trust system.
Yeah. Like, do you trust this person? Do you follow this person? So it was a bit open-ended for you as well in regards to how it ends and who's the Thing and everything. So I keep saying Thing because obviously
it was an interesting system. It didn't quite work as well as it could have, or as it sounded on paper. But it's a shame because nobody's ever tried to recreate it. And obviously it's very specific to the film. But basically you're creating, you're in control of one character primarily, but different AI characters join you as part of a squad throughout the game.
Yeah.
And because you've got this trust system, it's like, do they trust you and do you trust them? And if they don't trust you,
they won't do something you've asked them to do.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. And otherwise, it's a pretty bog standard third-person shooter, but it has this obviously interesting kink to it, whatever you want to call it. And there was supposed to be a sequel, but the company went into receivership before the sequel could get made, which is a shame because, like you said, it was a decent game, and you feel like that system could have been built upon. And similar to, what was it called, the Lord of the Rings game, which had the Nemesis system. It's one of those systems where you hear about it, you're like, it's such a great idea. This is just going to become a thing in video games. And then it's just never been done again, which is absolutely insane. And if ever a game needed a remake, like a full remake, you're like, do 2002 The Thing. And I mean, I've got a pretty clear idea of, well, I feel like it's got to be one of two companies who make the Thing video game in 2021.
Right.
For pure design, I'm thinking Visceral Games. I mean, Visceral Games, you think Dead Space. And Dead Space, the characters are very, very Thing-esque, aren't they?
Yeah.
A lot of tentacles, a lot of monsters. In terms of character design, in terms of mood, I'm thinking Visceral Games and Dead Space. And in terms of just not knowing what's real, what you can trust. I'm not sure if you played Prey. I think it was 2017. It was kind of almost a pseudo sequel. There was actually a 360 launch game called Prey. I'm not sure if it was a launch game, but it was around the launch. But this feels like a very different game where these things mimic, instead of mimicking necessarily humans, they can mimic items. So, all of a sudden you can be attacked by a cup. And that's made by Arcane Studios and published by Bethesda. But it's a very good game as well. And I feel like somewhere between those two games exists the perfect Thing remake for 2021, But I would love to see it. I'd love to see someone have a proper bash at it.
Well, I'm with you. I wasn't going to say Prey. That didn't come up in my thought process at all. Mm-hmm. But Dead Space definitely has that feeling.
Yeah. Although I got to be honest, movie aside, I'd happily just see Dead Space 4, to be honest.
Well, yeah.
I mean, the third one was a bit of a miss, but Dead Space 1 and 2. Oh, they're so
absolutely
good.
Fantastic. And like I said, that has the feeling, that has the tension, that has the panic, that has everything you would want from a Thing game. So I was going to go a Dead Space-esque.
Well, yeah, like you said, if you had Visceral Games for their polish, for their third-person mechanics, which does fall in line with the 2002 games, but then you include the trust system, the fear system from the original game, but obviously with a bit more refinement, then you've got the perfect thing here.
So, moving on to Legacy. Now this...
Oh, by the way, just to be clear, we're going to have to change the name of the Legacy section.
Go on.
My brother said you don't say Legacy right. I don't want to tell you.
I don't say Legacy right.
Supposedly, I never noticed it, dude. My brother, I was speaking to him, he's like, oh, you're going to have to change the name of the Legacy section. I was like, why? He was just changing something else. I was like, but Legacy's perfect. He's like, yeah, but Rob says it weird. I was like, does he?
Do
I don't want to put it in your head, but my brother was like, you say Legacy weird. And now I'm hearing you, Legacy. Did you say it? No, I think this is on my brother. The thing is, my brother lives in Korea, and he's lived in Asia for well over a decade now. And I think he's picked up this weird mix of like business English, Asian English. So I'm not going to blame you. We'll blame my brother and say, we're going to keep with Legacy. We'll keep with Legacy.
I can't think of any other way you would say leg.
I know that was my thing. He said, oh, you can't you use something different to Legacy? I was like, well, why? Because Legacy is literally perfect for what we're talking about. He's like, yeah, but Rob says it weird. I was like, does he? I was like, okay. So yeah, we're not going to change Legacy. All right, we'll just have to.
I really just want to do some weird ASMR thing for your brother now, where I just speak into the microphone really slowly, going.
Oh, yeah, like in the shows where we're going to get to the Legacy section right now. So yeah, we'll add that in at some point. But yeah, so sorry, the Legacy of the Thing movie.
So it had a prequel / remake in 2011 called The Thing again, set in a Norwegian camp.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things they did right with that film, a couple of things they did wrong, a lot of things they did wrong with it. But it's not that bad a film, the remake, or the prequel remake. Well, I mean, the thing that I did enjoy was obviously it ended exactly as The Thing began, with the Norwegian helicopter. But you had the weird little things like, how did the axe get into the wall?
Yeah.
And how did and these two bodies going together and everything like that. But it ended really strange. Didn't she survive?
I think was it Mary Elizabeth Winstead?
Yeah. Otherwise known as John McClane's daughter.
So I think of her as
Scott.
Ramona Flowers.
Yeah, Scott.
Dude, I love that film. Anyway, we'll leave that alone. I love him. I think she's great. What's that?
I'm pretty sure she survived. So in the story of both the things, you've got Childs and Mac there now, and she's walking around somewhere in the snow, surviving. So, like,
the thing is, you're talking about this, and I can't remember any of it. And it's one of those films, I put it in the same bracket. I know it's not really a remake, because like you say, it's actually a prequel. But I put it into the same category as stuff like the Total Recall remake, as the RoboCop remake, as these kind of like well enough made, inoffensive but totally forgettable movies. And the thing is, it's not terribly made at all. And it does have Mary Elizabeth Weinstein, who I like. It has Joel Edgerton in it, who I like. But it's lacking that magic. And the magic is John Carpenter. There's no two ways about it. And at the end of the day, the Thing prequel, whatever you want to call it, well, we'll call it the Thing prequel, it's a perfectly okay 2.5, 3-star movie, which I watched. I was like, that was fine. And I forgot about it almost immediately. The same as, did you see the Evil Dead remake? It was released probably around the same, maybe a couple of years later, 2012, 13.
2013.
Yeah, exactly the same. Where I watched it, I was like, that was fine. And you could have asked me an hour afterwards, what happened in that film? I'm like, I haven't got a fucking clue. No. I am not got a clue.
Nobody cut their hand off and for a chainsaw and that, so I wasn't
exactly. Yeah, and like you said, it's easy to rag on these films. And again, I use Total Recall and RoboCop as examples. They're not terrible films. They're just lacking that magic of the source material.
The Thing aside, Evil Dead and Total Recall change their names. They could have been decent films, but because they're going on the legacies of the classic films, you're
immediately encouraging and inviting comparison. And the fact of the matter is,
with the Thing prequel remake, you can't go away from it. It is the Thing.
100%.
You know what I mean?
And it's just not as good. It's just not as good. And again, it's not to say it's a terrible film, because people make that immediate, and it's natural. You make the comparison, and it's not nearly as good as the original. So people just say in that internet way, that's fucking shit. Yeah. And it's not fucking shit. It's a perfectly okay film, which is just, its greatest crime is that it's forgettable. Yeah. Actually saying that, of those films, I have a bit of a soft spot for the RoboCop remake. It's not great. I thought it was okay. I think it's just because I like Joel Kinnaman as Murphy.
I really like Joel Kinnaman.
I really like Joel Kinnaman.
We'll obviously touch on that a lot when we eventually do RoboCop.
Oh, we're doing RoboCop for sure. Yeah. But we'll stay on point. So yeah,
there you go, John. That was the legacy section.
Well, we haven't finished. Wait, wasn't there more?
Was there more? I thought
they were. I'm sure they announced a remake.
Sorry, we're continuing the legacy section.
Well, beyond the fact that this does have a pretty big, there's the video game, there's board games, there's comics also. I'm sure there's been, because I was reading an interview with John Carpenter and, wait, am I thinking of something else? No, they were talking about Escape from New York. But I'm sure there was a remake announced relatively recently of the Thing. I might be making that up. I've already made up a name. But let's leave the legacy section.
Okay, so sorry, obviously we've already mentioned it, but part of the legacy was that it's the beginning of his Apocalypse trilogy.
Yeah. So there's another thing. But I've clumsily stuck us on the legacy section. And I'm just going to keep saying legacy, or enforce you to say it just to freak my brother out. But
I really want him to explain to you how I say legacy weird. That's made my day.
The thing is, I was really listening out for it. I was like, maybe he does say legacy fucking weird, and I just wasn't paying attention. It sounds fine to me, but I don't know. But anyway, so back to the film. This is usually the one you're pretty good on. But I mean, the one I will say is... where the fuck I had it all written down, facts, is that this is actually based on loosely on a novel, or a novella, as it were, from 1938, called Who Goes There by John W. Campbell Jr. And this is the second adaptation of that book, because the movie from 1951, The Thing from Another World, is actually an adaptation of the same book. And
they actually class this as a remake of that as well.
Yeah, which is crazy. And actually, when this film was originally in production in the 1970s, because this went through a whole bunch of directors, different actors. I think Nick Nolte was up for the role at one point, Jeff Bridges, was that this was going to be much closer to the book, so much closer to the source material, Who Goes There? And it actually moved further and further away as production went on. Obviously, John Carpenter went on board. But yeah, it's crazy that I had no idea that one, it was based on a novella, and two, that it was a remake of a film that already existed.
Well, they said the opening title attempts to replicate the appearance of the original Howard Hawks film. To create that effect, an animation cell with The Thing written on it was placed behind a smoke-filled fish tank, which was covered with a plastic garbage bag. The bag was ignited, creating the effect of the title burning onto the screen.
Awesome.
Practical. That is such a good way to do that. Best. Just grab a fish tank, fill it with smoke. Do you know what I mean?
All I need to know now is how the fuck they did the head spider thing. But yeah, I'll find out.
I haven't come across that yet.
The other ones I've got, okay, so 70s, Windows. That's basically all the other ones I've got written down. We've covered during our very long conversation, so I'll leave it to you.
There was only a couple more. Keith David wore gloves throughout most of the film because he'd broken his hand in a car accident, so he's wearing a cast for most of it.
Oh, pretty crafty. I didn't notice.
I didn't notice that. The female voice of MacReady's computer was performed by Adrienne Barbeau, who was the wife of John Carpenter at the time.
Ah, cool.
Stop motion animation, we've already said that. Oh no, some scenes were shot with stop motion animation, but John Carpenter rejected them because they looked too fake.
Well, surely I was convinced it was stop motion animation because all of the film, the vast majority of the film was fantastic. But there's the bit at the end with the dynamite when a fucking tentacle comes up out of the floor and grabs the kind of the plunger, whatever you want to call it. And I was like, that bit looked dodgy. And to me, that looked like stop motion animation. I don't know what else it could be.
No.
I don't know. Sorry, I wasn't expecting to know the answers.
I was just apparently he rejected it because it looked fake. So I'm not saying that they did any more stop motion animation in there, but according to this, there wasn't any. To your comment of Norwegian hate, the film was originally banned when released in Finland.
Wait, in Finland? Why in Finland?
I don't know.
Nobody's talking shit about the Finnish. They were very busy mixing up the Norwegians with the Swedish. And it was only MacReady who clearly hates the Norwegians and maybe the Swedish. You know, you could maybe argue the fact that he's just not keen on the Nordic states at all. So maybe that's why Finland took umbrage. Yeah. I'm not sure why of all countries, Finland were like, nah, fuck this guy. I'm not having it. I love Sweden. I love Norway. I'm not having him talk shit about him. So we're banning this film.
Two more from me then. The final confrontation with the Blair thing required the assistance of 50 technicians. 50 technicians for that.
Well, as I said, the Blair transformation scene is up there for me with the Wolf transformation from American Werewolf in London. In terms of like top tier physical effect moments on screen, and they're always the most horrific ones because they're always the ones where like, I can't believe this is happening. I would have that, like the bit where his head literally stretches and falls off and there's tentacles and his body opens up. I'm like, it's just unbelievable. I can see, like, you can only imagine, like you say, all those people behind the scenes with levers and all kinds of shit to make it work. But they do a great job, like hiding the strings, as it were.
Also, I think you need a bit of justification. Not you personally. Not justification. Sorry, redemption for you. The tentacles that Clark sees in the dog cage are whips being manoeuvred by Rob Bottin.
Oh, okay. Well, there we go. Rob Bottin. So, he is involved. I didn't just make up that name. I just took the wrong name for special effects. So he was involved in the special effects, but he's not necessarily just the special effects guy. It makes me feel slightly better.
I read something about special effects, but I can't find it in my notes.
Well, the thing is, I'm sure it said Rob Bottin and someone else. I think we might be right combined, as it were. You know, I think we've both got it right and wrong. Here we go. If that makes sense.
The film is considered a benchmark in special makeup effects. The effects were created by Rob Bottin, who was only 20 when he started the project.
Fuck you! I got it right. I wasn't making it up. Sorry, I said fuck you. It's like you were incredibly polite about it, all to be honest. But I'm still quite happy that I didn't make up that name because I'm in my 39th year now, and if I'm just starting to make up names, I'm like, oh, this is
the reason why I started to question this is because I remember reading the name and. Like the makeup effects guy was young. I said 19, but 22. But when we talked about the other guy, what was his name now?
Not Rob Bottin.
It's not Rob Bottin. No, you're correct on that one. When we were talking about him and I looked at his age, he was born in 42, so he would have been 40. So I was getting
Well, I feel like most of our facts and our conversation has been pretty on point, but we've somewhere down the line, in terms of the special effects, as much as we may have loved them, our facts have been a little bit sketchy. But I like to think, an hour and a half into this podcast, we finally got there. And that's the important thing is like you stick with the podcast. Yeah, we might fill your head full of bullshit for the first hour, but we get there eventually. And at least at the end of it, you feel like you can walk away with a little bit of confidence that what we've told you in the end is in some way factual.
One of us might say legacy weird, but we'll
we'll just leave that. Yeah. But any more facts?
No, I think we're good for that. We're running a bit over, so I think we'll.
Okay, well, the last thing, and it is an interesting one, the soundtrack, because it's Ennio Morricone who is most famous for his spaghetti westerns. But again, I feel like you can hear it in this. It's this great soundtrack. It sounds a little bit 80s. It also sounds a little bit classic Hollywood. There's little hints of Western themes in there.
Yeah.
And it's another one of those things where at the time, his soundtrack for the film was absolutely panned. And if anything to take from this film is that don't always trust people's opinions, because obviously the film was panned, totally reappraised as a genre classic. The soundtrack, the score by Ennio Morricone was completely panned. He took some of the unused score from this movie, so not even the best stuff. The score from this movie he didn't even bother using. And they used it in Hateful Eight. And Hateful Eight won the fucking Oscar for Best Score. So yeah, to say, again, the critics were slightly off the mark with this film would be a massive understatement. So yeah, I think the Ennio Morricone score, regardless of what the critics may have said upon initial viewing, is an absolute masterpiece again.
It is a great score. And it
reminds me of the Alien a bit as well.
The only song, obviously, was Superstition, written and performed by Stevie Wonder.
Yeah, which they had to remove at one point, didn't they?
During I don't know what song they replaced it with, but they had contract rights or something, didn't they? So they had to replace it on home release. Then they got it back, and then
they've reestablished it.
Yeah.
So again, that's the musical bit. But when you think of the film, obviously you think of the Ennio Morricone score, and it is, it's not quite up there with, like I said, your Alien, which really is.
It builds a tension because that score comes in during the tense scenes.
So it doesn't. It's odd as well. Like it does have some of the hallmarks of a classic sci-fi kind of horror score of the time. Yeah. But like you said, there are those little bits of like that classic Ennio Morricone style where it's just like, man, there are little bits which sound like you could be watching a Western kind of thing. And as weird as it is, it works for this film. It totally does.
Oh yeah, 100%.
It does. So yeah. So beyond the score, we've pretty much covered everything there. And usually at this point, I guess, so, this was your choice. I assume you quite liked it. But the first question is rating, 5 stars.
You go first, mate. I went first last time for Temple of Doom. Feel free.
Okay, well, I think this is, from a personal perspective, I think this is a 5-star film. I really think this is a 5-star film. As I said a couple of times already, it's been my favorite rewatching, whatever you want to call it. It totally stands up. If you're asking me, would I encourage a friend now to go and watch this film? I totally would. Because again, there's this, beyond the fact that the effects totally hold up, a lot of the clothes do as well. And of course, you don't get anything which really dates it for the most part because it's set in the Antarctic. And the clothes are actually okay. There's this brief period in the early 80s where people dress kind of normal by today's standards. It's like before you get the big shoulder pads of the late 80s, and other than maybe Windows, who does wear flares, that's kind of moved out. So most people are wearing like fitted jeans, like pretty cool t-shirts. Nothing's overblown. It's kind of like the classic Eddie Murphy in Beverly Hills Cop.
Yeah.
Like you see him and you're just like, that you can just dress like that today.
Jeans, t-shirt, a jacket. There's not much.
Yeah. And of course, things go off the deep end again around the mid 80s. People start dressing as we imagine people did in the 80s. But for the most part, you see, it's just like, yeah, everyone looks pretty cool. They dress relatively, a little bit funky. We're talking about research scientists and a kind of ragtag group of folk forced together in the Antarctic. Yeah. So I think it still looks great. It's aged unbelievably well. I think it's a 5-star film, and I think it totally holds up.
The age, definitely, because it's a solitary location as well. Mm-hmm. You're not seeing anything else. You're not, other than these 13 men, and probably half of them, a lot of them are forgettable.
Yeah,
like you say, the way they dress or anything like that. It's a timeless film. Like
other than Chess Wizard.
Well, and
Blair's computer. Yeah. Well, no. The sombrero hat is absolutely timeless because I don't know what time that comes from. I don't look at that and go, "Oh, that's a classic '80s hat." Yeah. Do I fuck? I'm like, where the fuck did the hat come from? So, yeah, no idea. But it's aged beautifully.
It's a rare one for me as well, but it is a 5-star.
So 10 stars then between us, the two of us.
I absolutely love this film. Again, you've said it so many times during this podcast about critic misfire. This is one of the biggest critic misfires that I think we're going to cover on this podcast.
Well, as I said, other than the other obvious one is unbelievably Blade Runner, which I can't believe was released the same year, almost the same time. And it has such a similar trajectory with the score, with the film itself, the fact that it was totally just misunderstood. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Would I recommend it for others? Absolutely. I can't give something a 5-star and keep it to myself.
No.
You know what I mean? This is something that I would recommend to others. I would encourage others to watch. It's the feeling of tension, like untrustworthiness of the others around you. Just everything. It does it all so well, and it's acted really well.
Well, yeah, and again, it speaks, like, as I said, it's not a short film. I think it's like an hour and 50 or something like that.
Yeah, hour and 49.
But it was like rewatching it and I was rewatching my wife, who I don't think had ever seen it before. And admittedly, she didn't love it as much as I did, but she still liked it. As someone coming in, relatively fresh to this film.
Yeah.
But what shocked me was the speed of this film. Like, it is straight to the races.
Yeah.
Like we said, straight away with the helicopter scene, there's aliens introduced almost immediately. And then it just goes straight into, all right, let's just build that palpable sense of paranoia, of tension. And they just run with it. And
everything's built up. Then you've got, as you've already mentioned, the 30-minute tension where there is no alien or anything. It's just these people just hanging around, but there's something in the background that's going wrong.
Yeah.
And it does it all so well.
Yeah, it really does.
It is a great
film.
film.
I think so. As you said, 2 5-star reviews.
Yeah,
we would absolutely encourage anyone who hasn't seen it to go and see it. If you've seen it before and you're listening to this, tell someone else to go and see it, because it deserves to be seen by more people.
100%. So
cool.
Before we end the show, then, mate, the last thing to do is for you to let me know what I'm watching this week.
This week, a bit of a shift in tone, I suppose. The absolutely classic horror comedy Beetlejuice, one of my favorite films of the 80s, and certainly in Michael Keaton's performance as Beetlejuice, one of legitimately my favorite performances of the decade. So I'm looking forward to seeing this for the 100th. This is not like The Thing for me. I have seen Beetlejuice a bajillion times. I know back to front. I will be throwing an array of horrendously delivered quotes at you next week. But Beetlejuice, if you're listening to this, that's your homework for this week. Watch Beetlejuice and hopefully join us next week.
Really looking forward to this.
That should be fun.
I will be singing a lot of Deos next week.
Oh, yeah, the songs as well. It's not even the quotes. I'll be singing the songs as well.
Bit of Harry Belafonte. And
we don't want to put people off. We want to give people a chance. Jesus.
Michael Keaton's perfect in his film. And we won't go into it, but we've mentioned it a lot during these podcasts about how everything goes back to Beetlejuice's model village. So that'll be an interesting one to actually watch the film that we reference so many times. Reference a lot, yeah. So really looking forward to this one. So
that should be good.
Can't wait for next week then.
Right, cheers. No, so it'll be really good. So Beetlejuice, and catch you next week.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Cheers, bye. Oh yeah, and before I forget, because I always forget, here's Rob telling you where you can actually find us.
Yeah, so we're currently on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter under Hey You Guys 80s or at Hey You Guys 80s. And we're also on email at heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Please feel free to drop us any emails, any recommendations, or any reviews you have. But whilst we're on about that, wherever you get your podcasts, please also smash the subscribe button. Yes, I said smash.
It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
Leave us a review and leave us some 5-star ratings as well. But make sure they're 5-star ratings.
Yeah. We're not interested in 1-star. 5-star. If it's not going to be 5-star, don't move smashing anything. Just leave your opinion to yourself. 5-star ratings only. But yeah, if you could do that, we'd really appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. See you next week. Legacy.